I'm Jesse Steele. I'm the editor at PacificDailyTimes.com. And I started this little website a few years back because I wanted to write my own stuff in a way that other people could join me without it celebrating me specifically. So I put out my own personal podcast, my own, personal articles, such as, whatever topics I like to individually write about. I do interesting writing pieces, some of them the letter, some of them the point. And a lot of that's through jessesteele.com. But then I do these news stacks every Monday. And one of them focuses on Asia. The other focuses on the United States. And those are the editorials, because that's just how I've planned how this works. It's intended to be a political commentary. And one thing that you will get from me is I'm not typically with the usual script from, whatever. News agencies have a script. They're always different. And people have their opinions about the news wanting this or that, but every news agency is a little bit different, has a little bit different culture. One thing that you do not get from me is the script that we're all doomed and that nothing's going to work. And the other thing you don't get from me is the script that China is bad. I don't buy that. I don't buy that nonsense. I'm not in support or against any countries other than my own. I'm American. And I don't run around and defend what America does either. I defend one thing, and that is that I saw it coming. It may sound strange, and that may sound arrogant, but if I don't think I know what I'm talking about, I shouldn't be talking to at least, talking in such a way that a lot of people can listen. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, understand that this goes out through many different venues. This has podcasts. This has many different places that this goes out. And YouTube is kind of more just my compassion on people who don't know how to listen to podcasts, and they want to listen to this, and they'll only do it through YouTube. So do not measure the audience based on how many people watch this on YouTube. This is a podcast. People don't watch podcasts on YouTube. That's just me being available. Just as a clarification. I don't try to push my ideas on other people. I only want people to see what I'm thinking, because people are interested in a titillating discussion, and I'm making that available. Now, I don't want to change your mind about anything, and I don't write in order to change your mind about something. I don't write to try to influence what's happening in other countries. I don't have an opinion about what China should do with its neighbors. I only have an opinion about what will happen if certain countries make certain decisions. If they go left, they'll end up that way. If they go right, they'll end up this way. If they go up, they'll be that over there. If they go down, they'll be over here. That's my only opinion. Which course they should take, I don't get involved in that. And that's not because I'm trying to not make people angry at me. That's because I don't want to do the thinking for anyone else. We have enough people telling us what to think and how to view this or that. I just want to pick it apart because I see so much, so that you can see it, take it apart and you can look how the pieces fit together and understand history and know what's happening in the world, so that when all of a sudden this country and that country change their political relationship, they merge, they split, or this country declares war on that country and they attack, or these countries at war with each other stop. I just want people to know what's going on so that doesn't surprise them so much, and they understand a little bit more about what's been going on in the process. That's why I talk about Asia, and I talk about America, specifically the United States. I don't know. There's this Canadian argument that America includes Canada, and my answer to that is that the United States is a nation without a proper name. So if there were a nation that ought to be named America, that would be the United States. But as far as the New World goes, yes, Canada is part of the New World, as leaving the old feudalism of Europe goes. So when I say that I don't follow that script of China's bad. China is always bad. Oh, isn't China? China is so evil. I don't work that way. I don't agree with that. I don't like that in the Western press. It's like China is always the bad guy. If China is the bad guy, if they are, then people can discover that on their own. They don't need people in the news trying to say so. And one other thing, I write specifically to a Western audience. Although I will talk about what's happening in Asia, I don't care for Asians to read what I write. I'm not, that's other countries. I don't try to influence other countries. If country A is being mean and bullying country B, country B needs to get smart. We all have an unfair advantage, all of us. And the United States makes an enormous mess in the world by going and quote unquote helping all these other countries. We've all got an unfair advantage. In fact, I may even get into, I haven't written the editorials today, but I'm going to get into that when it comes to the United States Constitution, the Second Amendment and gun ownership. There's this argument that handguns and rifles are not able to overpower the United States military. So what's the point? And the world, it seems, has been taken over by people that don't know gravity. They don't know how things bounce. They don't understand lift. You know, an airplane wing is more surface on the top than the bottom. It goes through the air quickly, and because of the way, kind of like a vacuum works, like a vacuum cleaner works, it's similar. The air moves faster, air pressure's lower, and just the shape of that wing makes it automatically want to go upward as it flies. Birds' wings are all designed with this. It's why they can maintain their flight. And there are certain ways things work. You throw a bouncy ball on the ground, it's going to bounce back. You throw it down to make it go up even higher. An airplane goes forward so that it goes upward. There are certain dynamics and ways of cause and action and reaction. Tide goes in, tide goes out. Why? Because of the moon. What's that have to do with ocean? If you understand how this stuff works, then it makes sense. But when people say, you can't take your handguns and your rifles and overpower the U.S. military, therefore there's no point in gun ownership, or something along those lines, they demonstrate that they don't really understand the way all the action, reaction, ebb and flow of life works. Rabbits are very small. So should they just give up and die because there are wolves in the wild? I mean, a rabbit can't directly fight a wolf. So what's the point in his existence? They should just give up. Rabbits should stop eating grass and just all die because they can't fight and overpower a wolf in a head-to-head combat. Well, that's the basic argument, to say that handguns can't overpower the United States military, therefore there's no point in gun ownership in America. It's totally irrelevant. Rabbits have big hind legs and they can run incredibly fast, and they survive. They don't need to overpower and extinguish wolves in the wild. Rabbits just need to be able to survive. Gun ownership in America is more designed to be, like the claws on a cat. You have a great big dog. If he wants to, he can defeat, quote unquote, that cat. But he doesn't want to, because in the process, that cat's little claws are going to scratch up his precious little soft nose. And the dog doesn't want to go through that unless he really has a good reason to. So, I'm not into the whole conspiracy kookery thing, but there are reasons for why certain power structures exist, and whether you're big or small, everyone has an unfair advantage. And the United States, and especially these overly sympathetic people, not the United States as a whole, but overly sympathetic people from the United States, look at this little tiny country over wherever, and they say, "Oh, that poor little country. They can't do anything. They need us to come and be the Messiah to rescue them, because we're the all-powerful, save everybody, feed everybody, send our military to deliver everybody nation." And there's this Messiah complex from both right and left wing all through America, that they need either our guns or they need our food. And the matter is, even mice are able to survive by being sneaky and quick. And cats catch them once in a while, but most of the time they evade, and mice survive. Everyone has an unfair advantage, and we need to give more people credit for that. And that's why when China has a conflict with Vietnam or whatever, I don't care. That's their problem. Vietnam has its unfair advantage as a smaller country. China has its unfair advantage as a bigger country. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and people just need to be a good job of being themselves, get along with each other, make friends, do something useful, be smart and not stupid, and let people be and make those decisions. I do not agree with Americans having such a strong opinion about China, in the sense that, they have to, China has to lose in order for America to win. And I especially don't appreciate that attitude from the news industry. So if Americans want to say they don't like this country or that country, that's fine. Do that. You're supposed to have those opinions. But in the news industry, there's people that read stuff around the world. And from a news writing perspective, I don't care what this country or that country does. As the guy who writes opinion, and I don't even report the news. I do news stacks. Other people report the news. I do not do news reporting. I do not go into the field and get the facts and provide background and context and report without fear or favor. I don't do that. I just see what other people are doing to chase the story, gather the facts, provide background and context, and reporting without fear or favor. And then I'm taking their stories. I'm making what's called a news stack. And every week I write my opinion about it. And I've got a good opinion because I've been doing this for years. And I guess the reason that I wanted to do this little talk today, I've been putting these on YouTube for over a year now, and I've been writing we could be pushing 5 years that I've been doing these articles. The reason I wanted to talk about this today is because the news today is very, very funny. And it all depending on how I feel about this little unusual podcast from the editor at the Times, I may do this kind of regularly. But as I'm going through the news stories today, oh my goodness, this website won't stop loading. It's been there for 10 minutes. And that website won't stop loading. It's been there for 10 minutes. Okay. The news stories today are almost comical. Let's just take Taiwan, for example. The Taipei Times, great little international newspaper. They really have a good mix-up of interesting stuff going on. If you want a simple place to get the news, go to taipeitimes.com. And it's just lovely. They've got a front page thing where they have a lot of top stories. A lot of it's international stuff. Anyhow, this is not an ad for them, by the way. It's owned by George Soros, for your information. Or something like that. Wikipedia. Check it out. Check out who owns Taipei Times. But it's a good little art newspaper, and they're reporting that Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs is reiterating that they support the United States, and that kind of stuff really irritates China. And it's just funny to me to watch. It's like a TV show sitcom where you got this guy doing that and that guy doing this, and the one guy always irritates the other guy. And this is the kind of stuff that Taiwan does. This cute little adorable country. They give flowers. The Queen of England always goes and looks at their flowers stand at the competitions. The Queen of England fell in love with their tea and named it Oriental Beauty. And Taiwan does these little cute things to make the world love them, like HTC, Asus, Acer, but then they do stuff like this, like their president calls Trump on Skype when they're technically not supposed to talk to each other. But, what's a congratulations? And China's so mad about it. And Taiwan does this to just irritate China. And I'm not taking sides with it. It's just funny to watch the family fight in the back seat. So they go through, they reiterate that they support working with the international community to sanctions on North Korea. Oh, and by the way, they're keeping close contact with Washington. And that kind of stuff really irritates China. I mean, they might as well add in the story that they're also drinking coffee with the Americans, and they love to go down to the American embassy and chat it up with them and take them tea every afternoon. And they also use things like Facebook or Gmail or YouTube or Instagram and other threats to national security, at least according to China. So they might as well, add all these other, we could call them caveats, I suppose, that would just irritate China. It's as if Taiwan's trying to irritate China. I don't have an opinion about it. It's just funny because it's like watching brothers fight. I mean, the parents are grieved and entertained at the same time. It's like, would you guys just, okay, whatever. I'm just an observer. Well, China's president, Xi Jinping, if you want to know how to pronounce it, they're looking at removing term limits, so he could become the eternal Xi. So now the American response is going to be, how dare he stay in power forever? Because it's China, it must be bad. That's what the West is going to say. I don't care. The BBC says why China's proposal was long expected. Now, how do I view that? Well, my whole thesis, my slogan at jessesteele.com is today's news yesterday. So the only thing I stick to in my articles is that it was all predictable. I saw this coming. And so, the way I view this, trying to be comical and to spice up conversation, I view this as, well, the BBC agrees with Jesse. That it was long expected. We saw this coming, right? See, it was long expected. So, I just think that's kind of funny. Then we've got the Xinhua news agency, which is from China. They're proposing a constitutional amendment, so they're to make Xi Jinping able to stay the eternal president, or I don't know, just no more term limits. They're changing the constitution to do that. Now, you're not going to get that very much reading the West. When you read Western newspapers, they're going to tell you the Chinese president is not going to have any more term limits. He's going to be there as long as he wants. And if you go to the Chinese website, they'll tell you that they're doing this through constitutional changes. They'll give you more of the close facts. That's why I like to get information from the source. That will, of course, be linked at PacificDailyTimes.com. Symphony, the Symphony editorial blog, symphony.pacificdailytimes.com. All right, we've got Apple is moving their iCloud encryption keys to China. All of a sudden, lots of bust-a-move stuff happening. This is really interesting. And then, anyhow, so the articles are talking about all of Xi Jinping. It's a C. They have two SH sounds. There's sh and there's s. It almost sounds like an S, but it's the s, Xi Jinping. Well, don't accept people saying Xi Jinping. That's technically incorrect. It's C. So, I think League of Legends has some people with the name. They call him Xin Zhao. I think is one of the characters, and it's Xin Zhao because the X makes that high SH sound. Okay, so Trump is cracking down on North Korean ships. Taiwan supports it, China doesn't, and all of a sudden North Korea is coming to the table. Well, now, China has their security concerns. I mean, there are a lot of people trying to weasel their way into China. I have no interest in interfering with China. I don't even want to go there. I use Facebook, and they don't want Facebook, so they don't want me to go there. So I'm not going to go to China. I don't want to interfere. They think Facebook is a threat to their national security. Fine. That means I should just stay out of their way and let them work. China's got lots of stuff to deal with in their own country. They don't need to worry about me going there. People ask why I don't go to China. I'm like, hello. If they've got so many problems that Facebook and YouTube are a threat to national security in China, then I would do China a favor by not going there. Why go there? Give them the space to deal with their stuff and don't interfere with other people. That just be friendly. So I don't go to China because I think they don't need me there. They've got stuff that they're doing. So, anyhow, China objects, of course, and within China, it's possible that makes sense because now all of a sudden there's all this naval military activity right in their own backyard, and that could kind of freak them out a little bit. Now, I'm not defending them, but I am going to say that to the West, China's response looks like the fat, smelly kid being rude and acting like he doesn't have any friends. Like, that's how they're going to come across. But to them, it makes sense. And if you knew, or if I knew, I don't know, what all goes on inside China, there might be a good reason to object that we don't know about. I don't render a judgment. I just look at it. China's objecting to the North Korean blockade, or whatever, the crackdown on the ships going to North Korea. China objects to it. It makes sense to them, and it makes China look like the bad guy to everybody else. And it goes round and round. Is it good or bad? I just see it. That's all as I see it. And the theme of the Pacific Times is that we know each other. This is what's going on. What's the judgment? Well, I leave that to you. I don't think for you. I don't want to persuade you. I'm just an observer, and I want you to see what I see because I read these articles every week. I get the information from the articles. I don't do interviews. Well, if I do interviews, I suppose it would be more related to Christians in the West. And by the way, I don't like Christian missionaries going to Asia. There are Christians in other countries. They need to solve their own problems. That includes China. I don't get this. Can you help me understand this? Maybe you can in the comments, but I don't think anyone can help me understand this. Christians in America learn that China has, quote unquote, the fastest growing church in the world. And the American Christian response is, I need to go help. Like, if it's the fastest growing in the world, it doesn't need help. And what would you help it with anyway? Are you going to help it start shrinking? Because America has the fastest shrinking church in the world, or something like that. I mean, people are leaving, churchianity. People are not believing in Jesus. Look, a lot of it started with Rob Bell and Brian McLaren. And people are walking away from the Sunday morning churchianity stuff because it's such a nothing burger. I mean, I'm Christian. I believe in the Bible, but a lot of preaching is a nothing burger. I mean, people have been saying that preaching is a nothing burger for decades. And to talk about the critiques of Willow Creek, which I actually think Willow Creek is good, but the nothing burgers are somewhere else. People who don't understand it want to copy Willow Creek the wrong way. So America's got church problems. Why are they trying to interfere with the Chinese? Goodness, stay at home. Focus, leave other people alone. The little guy can stand up for himself, and he needs to grow up and man up and woman up or whatever and rabbit up and take advantage of his unfair advantage, and he needs to do a good job of being him. I mean, Singapore is this little tiny country with its own military, and they're doing all right. Look at Monaco. The whole world loves them. Don't tell me that little automatically puts you at an advantage, and if you can't conquer everyone else in the universe, that means that you should just give up and stop and cease to exist. No. Everyone has his place, no matter how small. People should be really good at being whoever they are and really skilled at doing whatever they do. So leave it alone. Let other countries be, and keep hope. There's hope in the world. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Even though there's already a conflict going on in the Pacific, that doesn't mean that it's all KO and we're all finished. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. China has a lot of good people in it, contrary to the way Americans view China from the script in the West, not the West, but the Western newspapers, that China is always bad. China is not automatically bad. Getting the American missionaries out of China helped a lot of Christians grow in China, and the Chinese government is learning the Christians are the good guys because they want to obey the government and not interfere with stuff. Christians in China aren't political. They're like, well, that's government. I don't decide government, so leave it alone. And so the Chinese are actually discovering the Christians within their country are not that bad, which has a lot to do with this Vatican Beijing talk. The Vatican and Beijing are talking more and getting along more. So some people say that's good and some people say that's bad, but the thing is, good things are happening with China the more America steps back. And all this hatred of China's attacking other people, they're being mean. Well, who are the fat, lazy, welfare Americans that were buying super cheap stuff made in China that gave them that money in the first place? Americans will dump money into China by being too cheap to employ their neighbors. But then when China gets big, they'll just hate China, hate China, hate China. Goodness, use your brain. Don't just automatically hate other countries. Turn your brain on. Just think and be open. Don't leap to conclusions and focus on dealing with this stuff in your own house and let other people be alone enough. Give them the space to deal with this stuff in their own houses. This is very, very, very important for all of us to do. And if there was anything that comes through in my articles week by week, I hope that would be it. Well, anyhow, so I've got this high seas crackdown, and I'm looking at the articles here. Let's see, the UK Independent, Trump administration orders high seas crackdown on North Korean ships. Zero Hedge, U.S. prepares for aggressive high seas crackdown on North Korean sanctions violators. Let's see, we would get, exclusive, Yahoo Reuters. Exclusive, U.S. prepares high seas crackdown on North Korea. We've got, I don't know, go Google the word North Korea crackdown and you'll see all kinds of stuff show up. Those are only 3 articles that I found. It's interesting how one word shows up in like 8 different headlines from like, Rush Limbaugh does these news mashups where like reporters from different times and different networks all say exactly the same thing. Like it's kind of interesting. It's entertaining to watch them all say exactly the same thing. Like we're supposed to believe that they're different when they're not. Or they wouldn't say crackdown all the time. So this week is a crackdown. And they say Trump repeats himself a lot. What about the news? It's just entertaining. It's just, see, probably the way that works is some guy uses a word here and then other people they don't think. They just write down too much. They plagiarize too much. And so then the word goes around, and that's how the word crackdown gets in all the newspapers, because the news industry doesn't think creatively that much. They just kind of go on autopilot. And so it's funny to watch. It's just funny to watch. I'm wondering if there was anything else. Oh, this was the really funny thing that pushed me over the edge to make this little pre-editorial, podcast this week. North Korea may suddenly want talks because of how powerful it has become, from CNBC. And this goes back to January 7, at least, 11:19 p.m. on Sunday. Who's writing stories at CNBC at 11 p.m. at NBC? My goodness. So this came out, we're talking 2 weeks ago-ish. And, well, no, almost about exactly. To the minute. Goodness, this is within an hour 2 weeks ago of when I'm recording this. CNBC was arguing that the reason that North Korea would eventually come to the table is because they're powerful and have the nukes. See, they're not coming to the table because of the sanctions. I mean, that's a small part of it, I suppose. But the reason North Korea suddenly wants to talk is because they've got power. I mean, when you have power, you don't seek to talk to people who threaten you. You don't need to. But again, these guys at CNBC, it's like they take us for fools, or I mean, it's just funny watching people come up with these weird explanations to try to trick people. It sounds like a new, I mean, that's an old manipulation, brainwashing tactic, don't you know? Introduce an idea that people never thought of before. Doesn't matter how cockamamie it is, doesn't matter how messed up it is, doesn't matter how wrong how foolish it is, just share an idea that nobody's thought of before. And then people will think they're learning something. And it can be utter nonsense. It just has to be nonsense people haven't heard before. So the reason that according to CNBC, or the guy that not them, the experts that they're interviewing and displaying prominently on their network to share his opinion, which isn't their opinion, of course. Right. So this idea coming through CNBC, that's not theirs, but that they're celebrating, is that the reason North Korea is coming to the talks is because they have nukes. See, that North Korea getting nukes has saved the world. Because that North Korea getting nukes brought them to the table to talk and about us wanting to get rid of their nukes. just when I thought I'd seen it all, I think this has to be, just knowing the personalities of the characters, it's like you're into that TV show. You're like in season 6, season 9. It's been going on, whatever TV show, be it, Star Trek, Seinfeld, whatever. You get into, season 6 or 7, and the personalities of the characters are so well established. All of a sudden, you get all the running gags show up in the same episode. That's what I've been seeing here. And this has been a podcast from the editor at Pacific Daily Times, letting you know what's going on at my think desk, pacificdailytimes.com.